magically is going to appear on the screen, Dr. Yana Tchekhanovets' face, and there she is. And it doesn't even look like midnight there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Oh, finally. So please enable the chat and share screen.
Enable the chat. Okay, Sydney, you do that. And Yana, let me just tell everybody who you are. So we have the great honor and pleasure of now about to be hearing from Dr. Yana Tchekhanovets, who is an archaeologist, of course, and a senior lecturer at the Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Beersheba. She is a specialist and an expert in many, many things, but among them, late antique archaeology, Caucasian Christian communities of Byzantine Palestine, and the archaeology of pilgrimage. We have been hearing about Jerusalem's ups and downs and its status as a destination city made and remade, and that story will continue now with Yana's presentation on the pilgrim city. Yana, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon to everyone. I see so many familiar faces. Hard to believe that all of you are at Boston. And from my point of view, of course, the Byzantine period in the history of Jerusalem is the most important, because it's in the first time, perhaps in the first time in its history, when the city turns into religious center of the major part of the world. When the local Greek and Aramaic speaking population meets pilgrims flowing from all corners of the growing Christian world to see, to touch, and to experience the holy places. Many pilgrims choose to stay for years of life, slowly forming a unique cosmopolitic population of the city. The activity of pilgrims in the Byzantine Jerusalem is well attested by literary sources, historical chronicles, lives of saints, pilgrims' itineraries, and private letters. Relevant archaeological data is naturally concentrated in Jerusalem itself and around it. It was indeed the center of the Byzantine Holy Land, but it is also the most excavated and well-studied region in the country. The constantly growing archaeological evidence of Christian pilgrimage to Jerusalem and its impact on the city was obtained in the last decades, mainly during the salvage excavations of the Israel Antiquities Authority, prompted by intense development of the city. The material evidence of pilgrimage includes a great variety of finds. Architectural monastic complexes with unusual architectural or structural arrangements, space divisions such as living quarters, bathing facilities, especially large water reservoirs, enormously large number of cooking ware or ceramic vessels, big kitchens and refectories, and even in some cases, funeral arrangements for bypassing visitors, just in case. Within the city, after the construction of the Holy Sepulchre, the place of crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and other major sanctuaries, the constantly growing flow of pilgrims leads to establishment of numerous hospices and even the entire pilgrimage neighborhoods located to the west and to the north of the city walls. Roman previous Jerusalem is too small for these crowds and need extension. Such pilgrimage quarter was exposed by the archaeologists of Israel Antiquities Authority to the north of the city walls in a series of large excavations started in 1990s. It is a large agglomeration of various church institutions, the largest of this kind in Jerusalem. Interestingly, not mentioned by any Byzantine period literary sources. Altogether, at least 4 different monasteries were discovered here, with residential units that served local monks and pilgrims, with churches, bathhouses, water cisterns, various household units and tombs. Mind this odd elongated shape of the exposed area, that is because salvage excavations were performed for the development of the light rail in the city. The discovered epigraphic finds of this quarter give a possibility to speak of the imperial patronage on this project. The inscription of Byzantine Emperor Justinian was discovered here quite recently, being the second of this kind ever found in Jerusalem. The formation of Christian Jerusalem appears to be a long and multi-stage process that significantly changed the appearance of the city, its main arteria, and its focal points. The pilgrims' hospices and ceremonial routes became the key in the development of the new Christian topography of the city. In this regard, worth mentioning the seminal research of Michele Voltaggio on liturgical streets of Jerusalem, combining the literary evidence of ancient church calendars with archaeological data of the discovered remains of major Byzantine stepped streets in the city, and presenting a totally new understanding of the urban development of the Holy City. If we move outside the city itself, we will learn about various Byzantine road stations, mostly established already by the Roman authorities along the main roads leading to Jerusalem. Now, in this new Christian era, they start to serve the needs of the pilgrimage. Just to demonstrate a few examples, this is Horvat-el-Latatin on the Jerusalem-Lidda road, one of the 20 road stations marked on the Madaba map, on the 9th mile from the Holy City, arranged as a caravanserai, but still housing a monastery with a small chapel and some agricultural facilities. Here's another one, Beit Nekofa road station on Jerusalem-Jaffa road, modern highway, Jerusalem-Tel Aviv, partly excavated a few years ago with a chapel and even a small baptistry font in the shape of the cross. Some of these modest road stations are turning by the time into large ecclesiastic sites. Of a special interest is a network of pilgrimage churches and monasteries built along the roads of Judean Shephelah, a hilled region between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, previously not starring in Christian archaeology of the Holy Land. Numerous Shephelah sites were exposed archaeologically in the last decades, and illustrating the instrumental role of this region in the development of the pilgrimage routes connecting Jerusalem to the holy place to its south. To mention this marvelous complex, it's excavated at Horvat Midras and recently exposed Church of the Glorious Martyr with Slavish mosaics and archaeological evidence of continuous pilgrimage to the site far into early Islamic period, presented by hundreds of Abbasid period oil lamps discovered in the church crypt. Of a special value is an epigraphic evidence, the graffiti left by pilgrims at the holy sites and elsewhere. Just few examples presented here are the Armenian graffiti discovered in the salvage excavations in the southern and western parts of the city, with names and pleas for divine mercy, very common for this type of text. The material markers of pilgrimage includes also the finds from far lands, let's say isolated finds, produced outside the limits of the Holy Land and brought here. as this Pilgrim ampulla from Ephesus or other Asia Minor site, probably lost by a pilgrim in his long journey. Some fragments of the Coptic Egyptian ceramic ware and most exotic 4th century coins from Aksum, Ethiopia. The first coins minted using the cross symbol, discovered at 2 Byzantine sites in Jerusalem. This miniature carved bone box with 2 painted icons discovered at one of the Byzantine liturgical streets of Jerusalem could also serve as a pilgrimage eulogia, blessing souvenir. Such pocket edition icons are extremely rare. Only 2 parallels are known. One of them found on the main street in Gerasa, Jarash, Jordan. From the same site, Givati parking lot, comes this pilgrimage bronze ring discovered in early Islamic context. We can see here a scene of myrrh bearers by the empty tomb of Christ, greeted by an angel. Perhaps the ring supposed to remind its owner of his sacred journey and of the miracle of resurrection. Similar rings were previously known from private collections, but the one from Givati is the first discovered in a secure archaeological context. Quite amazing, these tiny objects of the 7th century already reproduce the classical iconography of the scene, so well known to us from the masterpieces of the Western and Eastern art. And this brings us back to the old scientific discussion regarding the pilgrimage art, or in other words, the role of the Palestinian realities transferred into the very far corners of Christendom by pilgrims who actually saw the holy places. A great research work was done during the last 100 years in studying the Western exemplars of this transfer of sacred images. And now the time has come to introduce the research dealing with the East. For example, the models of the Holy Tomb discovered in Armenia, Georgia, and Black Sea region. Jerusalem, as a real terrestrial city, experienced great changes after its Christianization. New magnificent buildings were erected here. Its urban layout was transformed, and its population grew as never before. Crowds of visitors from all over the Christian world, from East and from the West, flowed into the city and left their marks. Today we can follow their traces, but perhaps more important is that they took with them home the ideal image of the city and its holy relics, copied it elsewhere, giving it a long-lasting memory. I am staying now in one of these places where so much of Jerusalem was taken back. I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia, living on the street called Bethlehemi, just some 200 steps from Jerusalem Square, and facing from my balcony the church called Sioni, the Holy Zion. That's how Jerusalem continues to live in its Byzantine reality in the modern world. Long live the pilgrims for that. Thank you.
Okay, Yana, can you hear me? Yes. Questions for Yana. It's opened up a new Jerusalem for us, a Jerusalem that's connected to a much wider world.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Really lovely talk. I guess my question more so has to do with who are these pilgrims, particularly along the lines of class, right? Because for some of these individuals, they're traveling great distances. So I guess thinking about the material culture that we see being left by pilgrims in Jerusalem or across these roads, who is this representing? Like, is this something that is more so, is pilgrimage an act that only those who are well off are able to go on? Is this something that's maybe people save up over the course of their life to go on pilgrimage?
Wonderful question. If we look at the material evidence of the pilgrimage, it's very hard to say who were these people. Most of the names left, at least those of the first millennium of Christian sacred journeys, most of them are men, and most of them, when we can judge by the inscriptions, are clergy. We often see the names supplied by Ava, priest, father, monk, and so on. Women names, I guess, actually we have no one in the first 1,000 years. But if we look at the literary sources, we see that men, women, peasants, people of little towns, rich and poor, equally went to this journey. And it's very interesting and very weird, because for the people of the Roman world, for ancient world, generally speaking, these far travels were not something usual. I would say not something normal. The picture given by Byzantine sources is drawing to us crowds coming from all over, that the church authorities, city authorities had no place to put them in, to host them, to feed them, and so on. Miracles are needed to find water and food for caravans of pilgrims coming to visit the Holy Fathers in the desert. 500, 700, what to do with them? Just miracle can help. But the whole process starts with some kind of resistance from the side of the church authorities, because the Holy Fathers of the church are absolutely against this idea. Pray at home, they say. Don't go to this long journey. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for your health and dangerous for your spirit. Who knows which temptations are waiting on the way.
More questions for Yana?
Thank you again very much for your talk. You mentioned souvenir mementos, replicas that sort of represent the ideal image of the city or some of the sites. Can you say when in the Byzantine period that phenomenon first emerges? Is it from right after Constantinian Christianization, or is it a later phenomenon? It's like, do we know kind of when that first, the trinket trade and the images start to travel out?
Amazingly early. The pilgrimage movement starts sometimes during the 5th century and reached its peak in 6th, 7th century and continues already after the Arabic conquest. But most of the souvenirs that we see are dated to the 6th, 7th century. And in the same time, Christians start to reproduce the Holy City, both in the small forms, models, and in large, in a landscape. For example, in Georgia, again, where I'm staying now, the copy of Jerusalem was reproduced in the ancient capital of the country, Mtskheta, with all its most important site as a Calvary, sepulchre, burning bush of Mount Sinai, and so on, already in the 5th century. So it comes immediately with the embarrassment of the pilgrimage. It looks like people visiting the Holy Land are coming home so impressed that they immediately want to reconstruct what they have seen. And this little memento, these small souvenirs, are helping them to transfer the image of the real places into their homelands.
Yana, I have a question about
Please.
the end. So you showed us the amazing collection of lamps from the Abbasid levels of, now I don't remember if it was a monastery or a
The glorious
caravanserai.
martyr, an
The
unknown glorious martyr, excavations by Benjamin Storchin.
So Abbasid, and then into the 10th century, into the what is there an end?
10th century and early 11th century is some kind of enigma regarding anything related to Christian presence or Christian activity in the Holy Land. It seems that slowly after the fall of Byzantine, since it stopped to be a part of, since Palestine stopped to be a part of Byzantine Empire, the pilgrimage, if not completely ceased, but reduced significantly. We see the Christian activity again in the early second half of the 11th century, just in the eve of the Crusades. But what's happening in the middle, archaeologically, we are quite helpless here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yana, thank you so much.
Quite an operation. Thank you, and enjoy the remains of the day.